She won $252,000. Then she gave every single dollar of it away. Not to a charity, not to a foundation, not to some cause with a logo and a tax number attached to it. She gave it to the strangers who had been screaming her name in a parking lot in Washington, D.C. for an entire week. The WTA had never seen anything like it. Players donate all the time. Players post statements. Players write checks to organizations that issue them a receipt and a thank you email. Nobody hands the money straight back to the crowd. Nobody closes the loop like that. Stay with me. Because how she got to that decision is stranger and heavier than the headline makes it sound. 2 a.m, Quezon City. Years before any of this. A kid on a cracked outdoor basketball court, oversized socks bunched at the ankles, shoes that light up with every step. Her grandfather rebounds the ball for her. Her brother keeps score nobody asked him to keep. She is small enough that the hoop still looks unreasonable. Nobody on that court is thinking about tennis. Nobody is thinking about Washington or Wimbledon or a check with 6 figures on it. They are just trying to tire her out before school starts. It never works. That is the detail nobody puts in the highlight reel. Before there was a racket in her hand, there was simply a kid who would not stop moving. Now fast forward. Rock Creek Park, Washington, D.C. Late July. The air is thick, the kind of humidity that sits on your chest before the first ball has even been struck, and the flags are already there before she walks onto the court. Not a handful, not the usual scattering you get at a mid-tier hardcourt event. Hundreds of them, red, white, blue, and the 8-rayed sun, waving from sections that, by every reasonable expectation, shouldn't even know her name yet. The tournament's own chairman would later admit something strange, almost sheepish, about the weeks leading into the event. More than 8 out of every 10 ticket inquiries his office received were about one single player. Not the top seed, not the former world number 1. Her, he said he suspected the real number was even higher, that his staff simply didn't want to say it out loud. This is not supposed to happen to a player ranked 28 in the world at a WTA 500. This is the kind of gravity usually reserved for major champions, for names built over a full decade, not for someone who'd been playing at this level seriously for barely 2 years. Something was building underneath the surface of women's tennis long before anyone official was willing to name it. So here's the question worth sitting with as the first ball gets struck. What does a nation do when it finally gets someone worth pointing a flag at? We're about to find out. And fittingly, it starts with revenge. Round 1. Across the net, the woman who beat her at the Asian Games, the reigning Olympic gold medalist. That loss had lived inside her for 3 years. Quiet, unresolved, the kind of defeat that doesn't scar you all at once. It just waits. She drops the first set. Then, something shifts. Not panic. Not desperation. A gear change most 21-year-olds simply don't have access to under this kind of pressure. 4 of the next 5 games disappear from her opponent's side of the scoreboard. The match ends, and so does the ghost that had trailed her for 3 years. 1 down. Round 2, the defending champion. Up 5-1 in the second set. The match looks finished. A formality. Then the exact opposite happens. 5 straight games clawed back from nothing. A tiebreak closed out almost contemptuously. 7-1. 2 down. The quarterfinal is calmer, colder, almost surgical, a world number 10 dismantled in straight sets. The same scoreline she'd used on the same opponent weeks earlier in Berlin. Like she was reading from a script only she had access to. 3 down. Then the semifinal. History. Whether the building wanted to admit it yet or not, the first all-Asian semifinal in the history of a WTA 500. Across the net, a 4-time Grand Slam champion, someone who has played in stadiums twice this size in front of crowds twice as loud. 76 minutes later, it's over. Straight sets. 18 unforced errors on her side of the court to the champion's 34. A discipline gap, not a talent gap. And then the final. Rain interrupts it. forces an overnight suspension with the score sitting unfinished. The whole country made to wait one more restless day for an answer nobody had dared promise out loud. She beats the world's third-ranked player the next afternoon. 28 in the world when the week began. A career-high 20 by the time it ends. The first Filipina in the history of the sport to win a WTA singles title of any kind. That's the peak. That's the mountaintop. Now here's where the real story actually starts. Because this was not her first WTA final. 1 year earlier, on the grass at Eastbourne, she had already become the first Filipina ever to reach a WTA final. History. The first time around, except that particular chapter didn't end in a trophy. 2 hours and 26 minutes against a 19-year-old Australian. A first set lost. A second set won so convincingly it looked like the turning point everyone in the stadium wanted it to be. And then, in the decider, she held 4 separate match points. 4. Each one saved. Not because she collapsed. Not because her nerve failed her. Because her opponent simply refused to miss under that exact pressure. The match ended 12 points to 10 in a tiebreak both players will probably replay in their heads for years. She didn't get outplayed in that final. She got matched, shot for 2.5 hours, by someone who happened to flinch less across 10 specific points out of nearly 200 played that day. There is a very particular kind of pain in coming that close to something historic and watching it slip away by inches instead of miles. Not a blowout you can shrug off. A photo finish you have to carry. She said afterward that she still had motivation to become a better player and a better person. 20 years old, telling a room full of reporters almost apologetically that she wasn't anyone's queen yet. Here's the part almost nobody noticed in the moment. That loss didn't cost her anything. It built her. A win at Eastbourne makes DC Open a formality good, expected, forgettable in 5 years. A loss at Eastbourne turns DC Open into a resurrection story. The heartbreak is the exact reason the eventual trophy means something bigger than the trophy itself. The paradox is simple, and it is brutal in its simplicity. She needed to fall short in front of the entire world one time, publicly, painfully, so the world would actually be watching, invested, holding its breath. The next time she got close again. Without 4 blown match points on a rainy Sunday in England, there is no 80% of ticket inquiries carrying her name in Washington a year later. The wound is what built the audience. Which brings us to why this travels so far past a tennis scoreboard. Why people who've never watched a full match in their lives still found themselves talking about her that week. Somewhere in New York, in Virginia, in Maryland, families were booking flights and hotel rooms they couldn't necessarily spare, just to stand outside a tennis complex for a few hours and hold up a flag. Children stayed up past midnight on school nights to watch a stream from a country that had never really had this kind of hero before. 127 million people. A nation that had never, not once in its history, produced a tennis player capable of competing at this level. Until now. When she was asked, mid-tournament, what it felt like to have so much support behind her, she gave an answer that reframed the entire question. She said it wasn't really about her at all. It was about what it means, right now, to be Filipino. That is not modesty for the cameras. That is the entire engine driving this story. This was never really just about a 21-year-old winning a tennis tournament in the American capital. It's about a country finally getting to see itself reflected on a stage it had been shut out of for generations. That's the part that crosses every border, the specific and universal ache of being overlooked for so long that you stop expecting to be seen at all. And then, suddenly, impossibly, you are. That is why the prize money gesture landed the way it did. Not because $252,000 is an unusually enormous sum in professional sports. Plenty of athletes give away more every year. It landed because she didn't donate it somewhere abstract, somewhere distant, somewhere she'd never have to see the result of. She routed it directly back to the exact people who had funded flights, booked hotel rooms, and lost sleep just to occupy a seat in that stadium for her. She closed the loop herself, in public, without waiting for anyone to ask her to. And here is the uncomfortable truth for anyone tempted to treat this moment as the ending. It isn't. She is 21 years old, sitting at a career-high ranking of 20 in the world, with an earnsum from a single week that now includes an Olympic gold medalist, a defending champion, a top 10 player, and a 4-time Grand Slam winner. The U.S. Open sits next on the calendar, her first real chance to test this new ranking against a full field of the very best players alive, on the sport's biggest American stage, in front of crowds that will now know exactly who she is before she even steps on court. A top 10 world ranking is no longer a distant hope. It's a math problem with a deadline attached to it. A Grand Slam final, not a fourth round, not a quarterfinal, an actual final is no longer a fantasy scenario reserved for someday. Based purely on the trajectory of the last 12 months, it is closer to a when than an if. And a home Grand Slam run, in front of a Filipino crowd on American soil that has already proven it will travel for her, is no longer a hypothetical either. It's the next chapter, already being written. She is not the finished version of herself. She is the rough draft. So here is where we land. A kid who once wore light-up shoes on a cracked outdoor court in Quezon City didn't just win a tennis tournament in Washington. She took the single biggest paycheck of her career and handed it straight back to the exact people who had shown up for her when almost nobody outside one country was paying attention. That's not a headline. That's a closed loop. The same flags that packed Rock Creek Park funded the plane tickets that put those fans in those seats in the first place. And the check that came out of that week went right back into the hands that started the whole thing. $252,000 out and back, full circle, inside the span of a single month. That is the whole story. Not a fairy tale ending stitched together for effect. A trade. Everything she had earned, given back to the people who gave her a reason to earn it in the first place. So here's my question for you. Was giving that prize money back to the fans the most selfless move you've seen from an athlete this year? Or is there someone else who's done something you think tops it? Drop it in the comments and tell me. Because in a few years, when everyone knows this name, you'll want a record of when you knew it first.